So Jesus' invitation, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It's not just you can't follow all of the rules. It's not just that culture is thinking differently than you are. It's just like, life is hard. Life is really hard right now. Let's be honest. It's really hard. Anxiety, depression, changing social norms, so many hours on devices, trying to keep up with everybody. The news flashing the latest shooting in front of our face. We can't even go to an Independence Day parade without a shooting. And then you can't get along with your neighbor. And families, there's so much family tension for so many of us. Life's hard. And Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. Then you have your own physical problems. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. We have an anxiety support group in our church, which I think is awesome. I love. They meet once a month. They support each other. They encourage each other. It's been so good. It's been so good. One of the things a support group like that does is it focuses on what's going on in your story, and they share their stories, and it's really good to talk about how anxiety affects you. And then we can talk about that and invite people into that group, but we need to actually take a step back for a moment and say that anxiety is not like an individual problem. It's a cultural problem. Like, we live in an anxious age. So if you feel like you're trapped in anxiety and you're thinking through your childhood issues or stuff that's going on with your body, those are very real things, but you could maybe change your story a little bit, take some medicine for your body and help with that. You're not leaving an anxious age. And there's a lot of us who are anxious who don't go to anxiety support groups or use that label because we're living in an anxious age. Our world's moving fast. The inputs are constant. The late Edwin Friedman, a rabbi and family therapist, argued that anxiety became a dominant factor in contemporary culture. He wrote this in the 90s. Before the internet, before the smartphone, he says, quote, anxiety escalates as society is overwhelmed by the quantity and speed of change. By classifying anxiety as a personal issue rather than a systemic issue, we place an enormous burden on the individual who must modify their personal lives to alleviate the suffering anxiety brings. So some of you anxious individuals, you're doing all the right things. Our world is screwed up. It's moving too fast. It's moving too fast. Stillness is an important practice, though, for all of us then. Unplugging is an important practice for all of us. Another commentator on our culture says this, and here's a German word for you. I'd love for all of us to say this together. Let me try it first myself. We are Zietkrankheit. Zietkrankheit. Say that with me. Zietkrankheit. It's called time famished or time weary. We have more time-saving devices now, and we're more anxious than we've ever been because we try to cram as much as we can rather than sitting on the rock. The more innovation is birthed through technology and the more our social norms shift toward free identities, the more we find ourselves not with a surplus but a deficit of time. We've been increasing speed each year for the last 300 years. When do we hit a limit? When do we go so fast that the spinning top is no longer stable? Not because it's slowed down, but because it's not made for these speeds. It's a thoughtful observation. Life's just moving too fast. And Ferris Bueller reminded us, if you don't stop and look around, you might miss it. What Jesus says is, come away with me for a little while. Be still.